done for me. Who brings out chaos back into order? Who makes the orphan a son and daughter? The King of glory, the King above all kings. Who rules the nations with truth and justice, shines like the sun in all of its brilliance. The King of glory, the King above all kings. This is amazing grace. This is unfailing love. That you would take my place. That you would bear my cross. You laid down your life. That I would be set free. Oh, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy, worthy, worthy. This is amazing grace. This is unfailing love. That you would take my place. That you would bear my cross. You laid down your life. That I would be set free. Oh, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me. Amen. You may be seated.
Well, everybody, good morning. Now, this is the end of our missions month. Well, I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. So, yes, we've been looking, praying for and supporting our young people going to summer camp in Romania, and they probably got back home to their families by now, and but they're taking with them a good message. So that's really good. And thank you for this month and how we've all participated. So today we're going to introduce Geoff, Burton, and Andrea. And they've come from Launchpad. And they've got a very special word to tell us about children, and about children in our schools and our systems today. And we all know that that is really, really, you know, a word for the moment. And also, I pray that as they speak, there's a little stirring in your heart that takes place. Okay, so God bless you.
Kia ora koutou ko Geoff Burton, taku ingoa. It's really, really nice to be with you guys this morning. There's an amazing presence of God in here, and I felt that as soon as I walked in. So thank you. Thank you to Jane that suggested we come in the first place, I think, and thank you to Ronnie for all the negotiations, all the phone calls we've had to get here. So I believe you've had an amazing month, according to Ronnie, and so we hope it'll end on a high, not a low this morning. I'm sure it will. We'll see what God does. Now, I'm putting that there just because apparently I need to keep track of time, which is not my forte. So, there's the clock there, actually. That's easy. Great. So, look, I wanted to start this morning. I think I need to take glasses off, actually. I'm at that stage where it's glasses off to read and glasses on to see you. I wanted to give you a little bit of background about me, and there's a purpose for it because it's part of, I guess, the journey that God has taken me on. So, a little bit of history. I grew up in the Manawatu, a long way from here. And after leaving school, I worked for a couple of years to raise some money to go and travel, and I went to Cape and Ray Bible School in England for a couple of years, which was an amazing time. And then after that, I came back to New Zealand and thought I'd better get serious about my education. My parents thought I should too. So I went and did a marketing degree at Massey University. And then my first job was in the marketing department in head office in Wellington of ANZ Bank. And so it was a good learning training ground for me. And by this stage, I was in my late 20s, and I loved life in Wellington. I was dating the girl of my dream, and things were going pretty well for the young guy. But about 2 years in, while I was working in the job, my life took a massive turn, and it was a direction that I had not expected was going to happen for me. I was, as part of my job, I was setting up a promotional caravan down at Wellington Wharf, and it was a big, long, tandem-wheeled caravan, and it had one wall of it that opened up, so it would fold down and allow people to go in and look at promotional displays and that sort of thing. Without warning, while I was crouched beside the wheels of the caravan, this ramp came down, and it weighed exactly 1 tonne, I was told. And I took the full impact on the middle of my back, and the end result of that was that my spine severed in half. So at 7 o'clock that evening, the surgeon, I'd got to Wellington Hospital, the surgeon stood beside my bed, and he said, look, we're going to need to operate. There's no choice. For a guy your age, you'll never have any quality of life. But I do need to tell you that it's unlikely that you'll walk again. And so when you hear those words, of course, a lot of emotions run through your head. And that there was a lot going on. And over the next few days that followed, I found myself bargaining, negotiating with God. And at that moment, you make all sorts of promises, all sorts of things that you're going to do if he would just let me walk again. And I guess overnight, I'd gone from a young, confident, healthy, independent young man to being unable to move, a position of total dependence. I couldn't roll over in the bed. Every 4 hours, some nurses would come, 2 nurses, and they'd roll me onto my side, which I really enjoyed because I got to look this way for a few moments rather than straight up at the stained hospital ceiling from a bed. And then they'd roll me back again. And that was the amount of my movement. And it was a pretty interesting state emotionally to go through. I guess my confidence was completely gone, and my mind and emotions were still catching up. 4 days after the accident, suddenly for me, the lights went on. And I started to realize that all of my life I had pursued independence. And I think it's kind of how we're made, you know. We seek to be independent, and it's not all a bad thing, but it can be when it means independence from God. And up to that point, I would have argued that I was living a life dependent on God. But I realized it was only when all of that was stripped away And I was, for probably the first time in my life, totally out of control. That I then realised that those words of living a life dependent on God had been words only. Eventually, going forward, I started to get some feeling back in my legs, and then once the swelling subsided, they were able to operate on my back, and they literally bolted me back together with some massive bolts. So I began then the long journey of learning to walk again and picking up the fragments of my life that had been there, and it took a few years. As I look back, though, it was certainly something I never would have asked for, and I certainly didn't want for that to happen. But I also realised I needed it. I needed a reset. And I think that was a turning point. I guess it was the second chance, but it was also a point of realising that I needed to start living a life that truly was dependent on God, not just by words. A few years later, God allowed me to pursue my dream. I'd always wanted to work in television, so I went to work at Avalon Studios, and then 25 years later, after doing a lot of shows, mostly lifestyle TV shows, I was sitting on the sofa one night and we were working on a really difficult renovation show that was not going well, and my brother phoned up, and he just happened to say that the CEO of what was the Church's Education Commission, our official name, that the CEO had resigned. And it was sort of unusual that he mentioned this to me, because we didn't normally talk about things like that. But as soon as he said it, I knew that I had to apply for the role. Humanly speaking, none of it made any sense. I was completely happy doing what I was doing, and I had a little bit to go in order to finish the TV show. But I just knew that God was saying, do this. At any other time, I would have thought, I'm really not interested. But when I look back, God had been preparing me for this role for a very long time. And I started to remember some of the promises that I had made on my hospital bed. They started to flood back. And I had truly forgotten them for a long time. I then went and spoke to two of my Christian mentors, two Christian mates, about the job, and both of them said, don't do it. And the reason they said that is they said, oh, look, it's all, it's a secular world now, it's a sinking ship. Why would you want to be that guy that, is there when it ends? So they're incredibly positive. But at that moment, I had to listen to another voice. I had to listen to the voice of God, not what these guys were saying to me. And I think that's exactly what God wanted me to do. He wanted me to listen to him. I tend to often seek lots of opinions from lots of people, and too many people. But God was saying, listen to me. I immediately thought, this seems like an odd step though. Why me? What have I got to bring to this role? I had taught what was Bible in schools then for 10 years. And my mum had also taught it for 45 years, so I'd always understood the value of the work. But it wasn't obvious to me why God was asking me to do this. But what I did know is that I just needed to make myself available. And the reason that I tell you that story this morning is that I want to encourage you that if God wants to use us, he is going to equip us. He's going to equip us. I felt out of my depth. But God wasn't ever asking me to do it alone. He has always been in the boat with me. We don't step out on our own. Saul looked at Goliath and he said, he's too big for me to hit. Little David looked at Goliath and he said to God, he's too big for you to miss, God. It's how we look at what God has asked us to do. God does not need strong Christians to fulfill his mission, but he needs somebody who's willing. Romans 12 verse 1 says, Romans 12 verse 1 does not say, present your voice, your musical talent, your artistical talent. What does it say? Present your body. We can't do it, but with him all things are possible. We need, though, to stay connected. We need to stay connected to the power source. I want to use the illustration of a light bulb. A light bulb has everything it needs, but unless it's connected to the power source, it cannot shine. We do not take a person and say, be like Jesus. You've got head, filament, body. They can't. We can't. Because we have to be in contact with the power source. And that's something that I get reminded in, day out. And I must say, particularly in this role, I've never felt the need so much as to be connected to the power source. John chapter 5, verse 19 says, Jesus said, I can do nothing without God. So if that's Jesus saying that, I don't know why we ever think we can do stuff without God. Jesus needed it, and so do we. We need God. We need to be sure that we don't let fear, though, stop us from the pathway or the mission that God has for us. And I know I've been guilty of this at times, letting fear get in the way. Fear focuses on what is coming at us, not who is standing with us. John chapter 8, verse 29 says, the one who sent me is with me. He has not left me alone. Maturity of character, I believe, is when the nature of God is given greater attention than our circumstances. We don't have to know how God will use us. We just have to be available. And if you feel like you may be too small to make a difference, too insignificant to make a difference, try sleeping with a mosquito. Something so small can have a very big impact. None of us are too small. Well, this morning, as you know, is the final Sunday of Missions Month, and I want to talk about two areas. The first is Launchpad, that's been mentioned, and I'll tell you what the second one is after we've talked about the first one. So the question that I have been asked more than any other question since coming into this role is it still going? I didn't realise it was still going. And I think that's in part due to the media. The media has at times painted a pretty dim picture, and there's been a lot of opposition. And there will continue to be a lot of opposition. But the reality is that Launchpad is firing. We are blessed to be in hundreds of schools still throughout the nation. We have 27,000 kids taking part in a Launchpad class each week. We, as you know, we have a new brand, so it was previously Bible in Schools, and we felt we needed a brand that children would relate to better and that would take us into the next stage. So that has been really well received by schools. And we have a fresh, updated curriculum, which is also received well. Nowadays, parents have to opt their children in, so they need to look at the curriculum and see if that's something that they want to put their children in. And the majority of our children who are participating, the majority of those 27,000 kids will not come from a Christian home. They're just parents who would probably not tick the box of even being Christian, but they kind of want this, they see the value of this for their children. We get some really good feedback from principals and DPs at school and from teachers just saying it lifts the tone of our school. That's a comment we hear a lot. And it helps them. Their job is to impart better values into children. And so we're there to assist in that job too. It was very interesting that I'll talk a little bit more about this, but we were at a conference a couple of weeks ago and a lot of principals and school board chairs were there. And it was just after the shooting. And people were coming up and going, we need to do better. We need to do better for our tamariki. There's too much. This was, obviously everyone was in shock about that after the Auckland shooting. And they saw the value or the need to input further into children. The programs are fun, and you've only got to look at the kids. You go into primary school and they're taking part in a Launchpad class and look at their faces and how engaged they are. It's exciting. It's exciting to go in and do this. I want to play a little video we made this video because we felt that it would be easier to say in a video what Launchpad's really about. So let's watch that.
You do that. Oh, you need your helmet. Thank you. Kia ora. I know you're probably thinking, why am I wearing this? And that is a very good question. I'm here to tell you about Launchpad, a 30-minute school program that teaches us about mana, self-worth, and our character. I think we all know us tamariki can do with a little more of that. Or a lot. I know some of you have been thinking, what's Launchpad based on? Like, what's under the Launchpad? Straight up, stories from the Bible and other cool people like Kate Shepherd and Mother Teresa and Sir Atta Shirapa Nadanata. Shirapa Nadanata. Far out. Stories like Rosa Parks that stood against racism.
Do you think what Rosa did was brave?
Stories like the Good Samaritan who looked after someone who has been attacked.
With his last bit of strength, he could see someone walking down the road.
She cupped the water in her hands.
And legends like Hene Puri, a Māori female warrior who loved her enemies. We learn values like having courage, respecting and helping others, being a great friend. We need resilience, honesty, and we need compassion. And that's what Launchpad is all about, providing the platform for us to shoot off into the stars. Who wrote this? It's just about helping me prepare for life. I get it, Launchpad. If any of you adults want to find out some more, check out our website.
She's pretty good, isn't she? She had just turned 5 when we filmed that. And so she did get a bit tired, but we just fed her lots and lots of chocolates and she seemed to carry on. So we're seeing some pretty exciting things happening. And I believe God is taking us into a new season. In a social culture that seems increasingly at odds with the Christian perspective, I find it interesting how that the door is still remaining open for us to do this in schools in New Zealand. And I truly believe that for many children, the only place that they are going to hear who Jesus really is going to be at school in their Launchpad class. That is the only place. And I think, you know, in an increasingly secular society, our job has just got more important. It's just more important that we're out there doing it. But I have been thinking about what would it look like if we stopped doing what we do. Because if we just stopped turning up, stopped offering it, stopped trying to look for more people to take our programs, what would it look like? Because at times I wake up and I think, this is really, really hard. Should we bother to keep doing this? And as I was thinking about that a couple of months ago, I was reminded of the passage in Judges, and I want to read that to you. This is about a generation that did not know God. Judges chapter 2, verses 6 to 10. After Joshua sent the people away, each of the tribes left to take possession of the land allotted to them. And the Israelites served the Lord throughout the lifetime of Joshua and the leaders who outlived him, those who had seen all the great things the Lord had done for Israel. Joshua, the son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110. And then arose another generation after them, who did not know the Lord or the work which he had done for Israel. The people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord and served the Baals. They abandoned the Lord, the God of their ancestors, who had brought them out of Egypt. They went after other gods, worshipping the gods of the people around them. So you hear that while Joshua was alive, his generation kept the memory of God and his mighty acts alive in the people. And the people remained devoted to God. But after Joshua died, that new generation that came along, they hadn't heard. It hadn't been passed on to them for whatever reason. They hadn't been taught. And as a result, they served other gods. And I believe if we allow our children to grow up without any knowledge of who God is, we serve not only their ignorance and their unbelief, but ultimately their destruction. In my day, and probably for many of you, you'll better relate to this, lots of kids went to Sunday school. Most of my friends from school would go to Sunday school. There was a van that came around our neighbourhood, pick up all the kids, and off we went, and it was really good. But that is not happening like it used to. And that is why I believe that school will often be the only place that they're now going to hear. Someone was just saying, one of our presenters actually was saying that she was talking in class, and this little guy, she was asking about, what people understood and knew about God, and this little guy just said, my mum, she often says, oh my God, and he had no understanding of what God was other than in that context. Our mission at Launchpad is to ensure that the next generation continue to have the opportunity to hear the message of hope, truth and love. Yes, our place, and this is often said, we can't evangelize in schools. That's not our place anymore. We don't have that right. But then perhaps we never did, because God does the evangelizing. God does that. But what we can do is we can provide the environment that's conducive to learning about who God is. And it's really like gardening. I often think a gardener has no control over whether that seed grows or not. What they do is they plant, they nurture, they tend, they provide water, they provide the right environment, they make sure it gets sunlight. They bring all their tools, their knowledge, their wisdom to help that plant to grow. But ultimately, God must cause the growth. And I think it's the same for our children. We can sow those seeds of truth. The word does not return void. And I think the amazing thing is that we still have so many Bible stories in our lessons. We also have other role models that we might talk about, but predominantly we are still able to talk about, we're able to talk about God, we're able to talk about Jesus, and we're able to share Bible stories. And I believe that the seeds that are planted, they will call out to them for the rest of their lives. And we do. We hear some amazing stories from adults too that, they have been, I guess God spoke to them way back. Then sometimes they've forgotten it, gone on their own way, and then God will speak to them again and bring them back to himself. I just want to share a couple of stories, because it's always good to hear what's going on out there and which children, hear from children that are impacted. So I've got, the first one is, this was sent in to us. Hi everyone. Oh no, sorry. This one was actually on a East Auckland chat, online chat for neighbourhood chat. It says, hi everyone. My 9-year-old is loving the Launchpad Bible class at school and is requested to go to church. We haven't been to church and we would like to find a Christian one that is great for kids. I also have 6 and 13-year-old sons that would attend. We are based in Howick. Thanks for any recommendations. So often what starts in school will go to the family. This other one was from earlier this year. A little girl had been enjoying the Launchpad class at Owaroa Primary School and told her Launchpad teacher she wanted to go to church. Her Launchpad teacher recommended she talk to her parents about taking her to the local Elam church. They went as a family, and at the suggestion of the church, they did the Alpha course. The result was that they have all come to know God and are now regular attenders at that church. And then just a final one, a lady sent us an email saying the following. A mum and dad and a young boy attended a writing session. When I was told the boy's name was Elijah, I couldn't resist saying what a special name he had, and further asked his mum and dad, do you know who Elijah was in the Bible? Are you Christians? The mother replied, "No, we are not, but our son loves Jesus." So turning to the boy who was having a ball riding the pony, I asked Elijah, "Do you love Jesus?" He replied lovingly with a huge smile on his face, "I love Jesus," he said, with not an ounce of shame. "Who told you about Jesus?" I asked him, and he promptly replied, "My Launchpad teacher 3 years ago." Well, I was blown away by the boy's passion for Jesus. With his non-Christian parents, he was doing his faith alone, aged 8 years old. Extraordinary. And she asked us to share that. I'd like to invite Andrea now to come and, I guess, tell her story of her earlier times and what God did for her.
Kia ora koutou, whakalofa lahi atu ki o mautolo osi. Good morning, I'm Andrea from National Office from Launchpad, and I'm here to tell you my story very quickly because I'm aware of time. So I was at Mount Roskill Primary School. I don't know if anyone ever grew up in Mount Roskill, but I grew up in Mount Roskill. And I went to school, and Bible in Schools was there, as it was called at the time. And I can't remember anything about who spoke or what they said. But I went home and I said to my mum, "We have to go to church because someone told me about Jesus." And we did. And my mum had to walk through a bit of fear because she thought she would be judged. Because it's quite funny, I say this testimony a lot and I keep getting emotional about it. So she walked through the fear and went into St. John's Presbyterian Church on Mount Albert Road. And they just loved us. And that's where we started to know God. And my whole family came to faith. And God, in his omniscience, had me all these years later come and work at Launchpad. And so now I get to go into schools. I know, it's amazing. So I get to go into schools and I get to be the one to tell the children the stories of hope. And I get to ask God to do it again and to save another family. So that's my story. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. And Andrea does incredible work for Launchpad. Right, well, I think, look, that brings us to the end of talking about Launchpad. I want to talk to you about another brand, and this is called LifeWalk. Put up your hand if you've heard of LifeWalk. No. Well, I actually call it New Zealand's best kept secret because it's been around for years, but we're really trying to change that and bring it out from being in the dark, because LifeWalk does an incredible job of putting chaplains into school. So we look after Launchpad, and then LifeWalk is chaplains. And so it serves a different purpose, but it's about addressing pastoral care needs in school. And so a chaplain might go into a school 4 hours a week, and they will turn up, and the DP or someone else will normally say, "There's these 10 kids that are really, really struggling and they're not coping with what's going on at home." Sometimes it'll be they're going through a family breakup, often it will be that, or they're just extremely anxious. And I must say, since COVID, we have just had a massive increase of anxiety that children just need somebody to speak to, and somebody to listen, someone to listen without judging them, and to be able to pour out their hearts, what's going on. And someone a little bit distant, perhaps from not their family, not their teacher at school. And so we have huge, huge demand from schools. And as I said, we've just been at this conference in Rotorua last weekend. Last weekend we were there. And we spent 4 days engaging with school principals and school board chairs. So it was great because these are the people who make the decisions about whether we go in. We had a booth for Launchpad and we had a booth for LifeWalk. And we had 102 schools sign up for LifeWalk wanting chaplains. Now, I know that we can't deliver on that. I know that we don't have enough people to do that. But imagine if we could, because This is bringing life into schools. And kids might be struggling with being bullied, obviously parents split, loss of a loved one. And we have recently introduced a course which is called Seasons. And with Seasons, children can do that. It's particularly focusing on loss, trauma, and grief. And it's amazing what we're dealing with. We've had 4 suicides in primary school to deal with and mop up that around it. Now, it shouldn't be happening at that age, but it is. So I remain... actually, I think I want to play the video at this point, don't I? Yeah, we've got a little video. We're nearly done, actually, but just a little video of what life was.
I'm so sick of them arguing.
Where's the money? Get it!
Why can't they just be quiet?
Why won't they stop messaging me? How do I make them stop?
I miss you, Nan. We all love you very much.
What's the point of even coming here?
I don't have any friends now.
Hi, buddy. How are you?
That's good. I think it's really important that people have a chaplain to talk to.
Having a chaplain at our school has really improved in my schoolwork. I can focus more during class.
I've been seeing a lot of changes in my life. Like, I've been making a lot of new friends.
The teachers just don't have that time to be able to give a child one-on-one, and it's the one-on-one that's so important.
They're able to get that attention and it helps them to be able to verbalise how they're feeling.
We're just there to listen and support and maybe give them some tools on how to navigate their way through whatever's happening.
If someone is well in their outlook on life, that permeates through the classroom, through the playground and throughout the school as well, and people are happy.
Once you see the changes, you'll be happy with yourself and happy with your life.
I'd really like to say thank you to my chaplain for helping me and my family go through different things.
It's really rewarding hearing those stories and being able to be part of that.
So it just gives you a little glimpse into the reality for many and how hard it can be. So in closing, I really believe that God is asking us to protect this space, protect the opportunity that we still have. And I guess to take that message of hope, love and truth to children in our schools. The biggest challenge for Launchpad and for LifeWalk, it's a supply-demand issue. We have schools on a waiting list for both, and we can't supply, we can't meet all of that need. And so I really want to put it out to you guys this morning. We're really grateful for the opportunity to come and speak about this, but also if God is prompting you to get involved. And there's 2 different ways really, in the sense of being involved with a Launchpad class, and if you're too scared to do it on your own, maybe do it with someone else. That's a possibility as well. And the other option is with being a chaplain, you're working more one-on-one with children. So if we provide all the training, Launchpad is generally, it's a half-hour lesson, so there's sort of your prep time, there's the lesson, and then obviously the time to go to school. And then LifeWalk is more 4 hours a week, and not so much prep time, but just longer time in the school. So if God is prompting you, we would love to hear from you. We would love to hear from you. It'd be really good. And our desire is to be able to sow those seeds and continue to do this in schools while we can.
Stephen, what schools are you covering in LifeWalk? Is it primary, intermediate, or secondary as well?
Yeah, good question. So predominantly LifeWalk has focused on primary schools, and some intermediates, but increasingly we're getting demand from secondary schools. So secondary schools has not been our focus, but we're starting to get that, so we do take it into secondary schools as well. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Oh 'cause I know there is peace within your presence. I speak Jesus.
Father, we thank you for this morning, Lord God. It's our prayer, Lord God, that we continue to glorify you this week, Lord God, and all we do, Father. Lead us on a righteous path this week, Father, until we meet together again next week. In your precious and holy name, Father. Amen. Have a great week, everyone. Cheers.